Why group psychotherapy? Why groups in general? Why do you hang out with other people? It may be necessity that to get your master's degree you need to be in a cohort, but are there other reasons beyond practicality? Uh, Various thoughts about this. Some people would say humans are a social animal, that the way we are wired to want to be part of something. This can go back through anthropology, that generally throughout recorded history, people have lived with other people. There have been people who are lone wolves. We have those in Colorado, live in the mountains, or Buddhist teachers who go on retreat for many, many years. But generally, people seem to need people. Why would be an interesting idea. There could be the biological drive. Klein would say that, in disagreeing with Freud, that it's more than just sex or aggression we desire. We desire relationships. Other people would say it's survival. It's very, very hard to live individually. You'd have to grow all your food, buy all your food. If we have some kind of social system, it can make life easier, and potentially people could get more of what they want through interchanging with other people. But in terms of group psychotherapy, it initially started, I think, out of efficiency. That simultaneously, and we'll cover this more in the group history lecture, but Joseph Pratt wanted to see multiple people at once. So in his tuberculosis clinic, he got many, many people together and was trying to teach, but they weren't interested in teaching or learning. They were interested in learning, but they were mainly interested in connecting with other people. Similarly, in Europe, at the same time, Moreno wanted to work with multiple people and found actually that by being in a group doing psychodrama together, people seemed to get more benefit, particularly from being embodied and interchanging with others, than they did with him sitting down on a park bench with the homeless people of Vienna and talking with them. Cody Marsh, which we'll also cover more of, thought that only through the wounding that we receive through groups that we can eventually heal through groups. That we've all been isolated, misunderstood, hurt, potentially traumatized by other groups. And that in talking about this individually in psychotherapy and personal reflection, meditation, isn't going to get the job done of healing. The second thought I want to cover is group psychotherapy provides an opportunity to help rise above therapist bias, therapist subjectivity. Trigent Burrow in the 30s got called out by one of his analysans, saying, "You don't understand me. It's all you. I know your family. I know a little bit about you. You're not seeing me clearly at all." And through their discussions, they decided to form a group. So the therapist will have a view of, oh, you have an unresolved transference towards your father where you can never shine because that will make him feel bad. And then the therapist may work that angle endlessly in therapy, whether consciously or unconsciously. Or there may be a different view that, oh, you're a traumatic event when you were 4, when your dad had to go to war in Vietnam or Afghanistan, for instance, made you feel very unsafe and unpredictable about the future, and may work that angle endlessly. But when you get in a group and it gets flowing and growing, you get to see how people respond and act. So in the first example, we'll see if that person wants to shine, will allow themselves to shine in group, or whether they feel they have to be smaller. we'll see if that other person has a hesitancy in the second example of not wanting to connect, of being very scared, somewhat nihilistic about relationships, thinking that they're going to be disturbed and they have no power in some way. One of the greatest learnings, I think, for students and for everyone in group psychotherapy is that what we think, other people do not think this. There's a kind of self-serving bias we all have from social psychology, that we think what we think is right. And when you get in a group, people will have different views. I find Betty very warm. I find her cold and aloof. I find her very scared. I find her very carefree. So in some way, people begin to see that potentially, maybe at first they all think they're right, but potentially over discussions that what they were thinking is not necessarily true in some manner. And they can begin to take back their projections and begin to realize their projections out to other people in the world, in other areas in the world. This brings me to my next point about why group therapy. It can be more powerful than individual therapy. That by learning how to have relationships with multiple people, learning how to deal with your anxieties, your fear, your symptoms, your orientation with others is more similar to what you'll do in the world than having individual psychotherapy. I mean, the research generally says that group psychotherapy is at least as effective for virtually every DSM symptom cluster, which is basically how most of mental health research is done these days. The other point is necessity. When I started in this field, I worked at community mental health for the first 10 years of my career with people without insurance, low income, poverty, homeless. And I'm thinking I worked at a clubhouse, which is a community organization, which would usually have about 100 people with a diagnosis of major mental illness and about 4 or 5 staff. So for us to try to provide enough contact, support, guidance, insight, we did many groups. I was doing about 10 groups a week there. We'd have job groups, psychoeducation, how to get hired. We would do self-regulation groups, how to deal with disappointment, how to not get impulsive when you feel excited. That many more people can work simultaneously in a group than they can individually. It also, in this case, costs less money for the government, which is a government-funded program, to see people in groups than it did to see them individually. The last thing I think I want to cover is personal taste. Some people find it very distasteful to be in groups, some group members. They may be so unique or special or have certain circumstances, or potentially from their orientation, they feel that others won't understand them, can't understand them, aren't willing to understand them, and that they need a very unique relationship, very private, dyadic relationship. And in many times this is true. Oftentimes group psychotherapy comes after individual therapy. That some people need to develop that early attachment bond, potentially with one person, a therapist, before they can expand out and create attachment bonds for other people. Other people, other clients may find it very difficult to be very intimate and talk in detail about their life, are much more accustomed to being on the outside of a group, or the middle child, invisible child syndrome, and very much prefer learning from others, not being the center of attention. And they may find sitting in group and listening to be much more beneficial than having to say everything in individual therapy. There's also therapist preference. Some therapists like the depth and intimacy that comes from dyadic relationships. Other therapists really enjoy the complex interplay of relationships arising all the time with much more affect, unpredictability of what will happen. So I think in this class you'll get to see what you may like or dislike about both group and individual psychotherapy. I think I like both as a therapist, and I like both as a member. What people say they get most out of group is a feedback on how they're seen. Many people are very unsure of how they're seen in the world. And even if you're in a group and people give you a variety of feedback, it somehow feels more connecting, although confusing, in some way settling, that you have something to work with beyond potentially your old introjects. So I think it's important to talk about the financial aspects of group psychotherapy. Generally, group psychotherapy by insurance companies, Medicaid, is reimbursed less than group psychotherapy. There's always a big movement about this, which I'm a part of, that is just as beneficial. Group psychotherapy takes a lot of training and experience to become efficient at and productive at as a group leader. So as I talked about the clubhouse, you can see many people for the fee. I think I was making $11.11 an hour in my first postmaster's mental health job there. And I was seeing probably 60 clients a week in 10 groups of 8 people, 80 client contacts a week. So that's very affordable. Now in private practice, if you have 8 people paying $50 a group, it pays a lot more than $11.11 an hour. I think it's a decision you'll make. I know for myself, I have groups that I still do at very, very low fee, that if people want to be in a group, I want to make it possible for them to be in a group. At the same time, given my life circumstances of raising a family, being a professor on a moderate salary, maximizing my private practice time through doing groups is helpful for my son to get the things that he needs. So I guess I'd end by asking you, what are your thoughts? Why group psychotherapy? Not only why may you like it, why may it be helpful, but what's the other side of the argument? Why don't you like it? Why may it not be helpful? Why isn't it preferred? Why is it preferred? So I look forward to your questions, and I hope you have a wonderful rest of the day. Bye-bye.